That's not first, that's when we go.
Are we going?
All right,
We're live now, so I
We're
guess we're
starting to stream live to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're about to start the Gillmor game. Millionth plus
We're live.
episode. All right, and Brent's got confirmation. Mute is off. And we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Almost perfect. Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor gang, or at least most of it, for a rare Sunday appearance. Okay. Starting with Frank Radis, he's on the road traveling, and we'll see him again next time. Joining us from Seattle is Michael Markman.
How do you do? It is overcast, but a respite from the rain.
all right,
And that's enough, right, for a third?
that's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. I really don't care. Joining us from the Atlanta, Georgia area is Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
I got an hour before I got to get out of here.
Yeah, in other words, it takes you half an hour of preparation to be able to stay in your chair watching.
He has to fluff his bush.
Whoa. I'm not sure about
It's a football phrase. Don't go crazy on me.
What do you
I
mean,
did-
don't go crazy? You just went crazy.
Not in this country.
Brent, you usually have a Rams hat on. Today it says LAR. Please explain.
Are you serious?
I don't know.
LAR.
Even
Los
I
Angeles
understand what that means. Los Angeles Rams.
Oh. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Do I need to spell it out? Steven, do I need to spell it out for you?
I guess so.
Again. Let's see, who else? Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith Tier.
It's a great pleasure to spend my Sunday morning with you guys and our wonderful viewers.
You mean viewer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's, I don't think so.
The lucky person out there.
It's as Erwin Corey used to say, welcome to this secret performance. Yes.
That's Woody Allen these days.
No, that's not fair.
Okay.
We saw a Woody Allen film on Prime recently. It wasn't bad.
No, it's good. I've seen that one. But there's another one he's made that they're not showing. It's ready to go, but they're not showing it.
Oh,
Let's see. Did I introduce you, Keith?
yes.
You did.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
And from the state of the representation of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant.
Hello, Steve. How are you today? It is the
Oh.
Commonwealth. Why is that so difficult?
I don't know. I have trouble with a lot of things.
Eh?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, there you have it.
All right. So let's see. Am I going to do it? Last show, I did a 47-minute monologue about how Keith was calling everybody in crypto a liar. And he had that precise expression. So we can skip that this time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about The Sky is Falling, which is your latest polemic, which is that, we're all going to hell and the stock market is vanishing in a cloud of crypto smoke.
A tale of two markets, basically, which means that some things are vanishing and other things aren't. That's the key.
Okay, let me just point out we are not a stock tip firm. We have absolutely no insight, although Keith thinks he does, into any kind of advice or recommendations about anything. Sorry, didn't mean to intrude.
I just want to tell our viewers that I am that person that when I wake up in 2022 in the morning, if I was to have self-doubt, I'd just stay in bed. So Steve is right that I do not have self-doubt, but that doesn't mean I think I'm right. It just means I'm prepared to say what I think right now, but I reserve the right to change my mind.
Well, I can go with that. Michael Markman, what do you think about this moment that we're in or not in?
We're in a moment of peril. We're always in a moment of peril. We always are balanced on a knife edge between paradise and hell.
Oh.
Tell me about the paradise part. I missed
Don't
that.
you mean paradise
Well-
in the dashboard light?
Pardon me? Oh, just look at anybody's mission statements. There's where all the paradise is. It could be, except for the Republicans' mission statement, which is apparently anything Trump wants. But if you look at any political manifesto, any corporate mission statements, it's all paradise. Even Zuckerberg is promising paradise.
Yep.
All right, so be specific because I missed that memo.
Well, it's going to be a wonderful world where we are all able to get all the information we want, all the interpersonal connections we want, where the world of marketing will sell us only the things we want and never bother us with things that we don't want, and where human intimacy will be promoted through the magic of, I don't know, watching Hallmark greeting cards and the Hallmark channel. Everything's going to be wonderful, and we're all going to get fabulously rich.
So the Hallmark channel, I noticed that they're kicking off some of the right-wing networks. Is that a good idea?
Probably. I mean, most of the right-wing networks are not trafficking in opinion or in ideology, but in misinformation and lies. The only reason Fox stays on is because of sports. Fox News is bundled with Fox Sports, and Fox Sports is the anchor, which makes sure that the cable companies and the direct broadcast satellite companies aren't going to be doing to Fox what they did for One America News Network.
Wow. Brett Leary, you're getting ready for the World Series, right?
Yeah, that's it. No, I'm trying to get past. Is the Hallmark Network a right wing channel? I didn't know that.
No,
No,
I think there were a
I
few steps left out. It was
I was doing a magical segue transition.
It hasn't changed since the 1950s, though. So that.
No, but it's what some people call an AC joke, which is a joke where you go directly from A to C and assume the audience is going to add an interpolation of B and get the joke.
Either that or I assume that they're not going to get it at all and don't really care.
That may
That
also
would be me that doesn't care, but also they don't care. So we're all good.
Now, most people, Steve, I know this will come as a shock, but most people need a linear narrative.
They need to feel that there's a linear narrative. There doesn't have to be a narrative.
You don't have to spell it out for them, is what you're saying. But if they can't put the pieces together, they're kind of lost in space. Danger, Will Robinson.
But being lost in space is kind of the new normal, isn't it?
Not for me, but I reserve judgment until I hear what others think.
Okay, so let's get back to you again. Why is whatever it is that you said on your newsletter, why is that true?
Well, there's a mathematical truth which is contained within the phrase that multiples are shrinking. compressing, if you will. And what is a multiple? A multiple is when an investor values a company based on looking at its revenue and its rate of growth, and then based on that rate of growth, assigns a multiple of revenue to a value. So 50 times revenue is how much I think you're worth as a company, or 20 times revenue. And that number is very sensitive to the rate of growth. So if the company's revenues are growing 10% a year, they're going to get a very low multiple. If the company's revenues, like say Snowflake, are growing by 200 or 300% a year, they're going to get a very high multiple. Why? Because the rate of growth will, over the next few years, align with the current valuation. So what's happened is multiples in the public market historically are around 10 times revenue, but recently have been about 25 times revenue, and they've shrunk back to the norm. And that's also true in late stage private companies who are stacked up to go public. Suddenly their private valuations are higher than the public valuation would be were they to go public. So there'll be a freeze on IPOs. And then for early stage private companies, like the A and the B round companies.
All right, now speaking of the narrative, what, when you say early stage, I'm already lost.
Well, like, for example,
mean?
I've got a startup that I've been working on for a year, and it's had one seed round of financing. It's got 6 members of the team, and it has no revenue.
So the answer to what is early stage is something called seed round. What's that?
So that's when an investor backs a team and an idea, usually prior to them having a product, because they believe that the narrative they've been presented with will be executed against and produce
So
something of value.
all crypto startups are seed round?
No, there's some
Since they have no product?
There's some very late stage crypto companies that do have a product that are being valued very highly, like OpenSea, for example.
Michael's smiling. That's a good sign. So there is a way out.
I went from your A to C. I interpolated the B in there.
Okay. I don't mean to be demeaning. Just distracting.
Right.
But did I explain it enough, or do you want to?
Yeah, no, I'm looking for the DNA of answer one question with another question.
Well, the real question is, why did those multiples inflate in the first place? That's kind of the interesting question. Why did those multiples in the public markets go above 10 to like 20, 25, or even higher in some cases? And the private markets and the public markets are really quite distinct from each other. And the private markets is actually 3 markets. You could think of them as the seed market, the venture market, and the growth market. And they all have their own characteristics. So when you look at them all as a continuum, there is an apples to apples comparison, which is rate of growth and multiple of revenue leading to a valuation. So there's an apples to apples way to think about them. And that leads to this narrative that said, well, the stock market has corrected in some cases as more than 50%. Like Netflix is down 41% in 2 months, which is remarkable for a company that's so successful and big and growing still, but it's down 41%, not because it messed up, but because the market decided to only pay a certain multiple of revenue compared to what it was paying before. So why did it pay more before?
Well, there's an unspoken.
Well, one at a time. I'll start with Dennis. You were saying?
I was just going to say, you got to look at the bond market. Stocks go in opposite directions to the bond market. Inflation is causing the stock market to lose some of its exuberance. People are moving to bonds. When less money is chasing stocks, the multiples go down.
Yeah.
Michael, you were saying, sorry.
I was going to say something that's related to, or maybe expands on what Dennis just said. There's an unspoken part of the stock market, which is basically people buy stocks in the hopes that there will be somebody who will pay more in the future than you paid today. So if you expect to be able to sell the stock at a higher price, that's when it becomes valuable. It may have to do with the kinds of fundamentals that Keith is talking about, but it can also be very much hype based. And it's also based on what else can I do with my money. So as interest rates rise, people will be moving money away from speculative ventures to things that seem more steady.
I'd say yes. That's true, and I would add that there is a fundamental thing, which is the world economy, which is measured in GDP and rate of growth of GDP, and it's got sectors like industrial, raw material production, and so on and so forth, financial services, all those different sectors. And when you listen to the analysts who kind of do this for a job, they do trace the line between the fundamentals and a specific stock. And a specific stock, take Tesla, for example, and compare it to the auto market. The auto market has been shrinking for quite a number of years, but Tesla's growing like crazy. So even within a shrinking sector, there can be massively growing new buds. And so ultimately there is a rationality why Tesla's worth more than Ford.
Now, Keith, how much of the price of stocks is driven by programmatic trading, which is really just analyzing the volume and price movements in the market day to day and ignoring the fundamentals?
It's an interesting question. I mean, there's really two camps within trading. There's pattern matchers, and then there's fundamentalists. And the pattern matchers use algorithms, and you've probably seen them. They call it technical analysis, and they show these charts like this stock just went down to here, but a year ago it went a little bit further, and more recently it went up here. So the range is between here and here. And the 20-day moving average is, whatever it is. And our prediction is the next tick is going to be up. And so we're going to trade on an uptick. And that's algorithmic. And to me, that's like witchcraft. I think but you're right. It's a large percentage of trading is now algorithmic. And then you've got the fundamentalists, people like Buffett, who buy things that they believe there's value in based on fundamentals and trade on, analysis and instinct. So I think both camps exist, and they kind of cancel each other out to some extent.
Well, there have been technical analyses of the market going back decades and decades, and people used to plot them on graph paper with rulers and look for tops above tops and bottoms below bottoms. But over the last 10 years or so, last 15 years or so, it's become more and more refined and more algorithmic and much more fine-grained and fine-tuned.
Yeah.
So the tiniest movements can trigger huge buy and sell orders.
Yeah, there's a sheep effect basically in the algorithms. You follow the herd, and that leads to extremes that then get corrected. I don't know where we are. The hard thing about that, Michael, you probably agree, is like if I say to you, should we be buying this week? If the correction had gone too far due to the algorithms, we'd absolutely have to say yes. If you've got any cash at all, go and buy stuff. But the truth is we don't know.
Right.
Or I don't, anyway. Have we reached the bottom is a good question.
Of this discussion or the market?
There you go. You went.
That implies there was a top
right there. What?
I said that implies there was a top.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure.
Bottom implies the top.
Hey, can I take a snap poll of something?
I don't know. Is that
Yes, you can.
part of
Brad.
your remit, as they say?
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but I've got a snap poll I'd like to do. And it's based on this notification I got from Facebook. I don't even know if you can see this, but let me see if you can see this. Let me know if you probably can't see that one right
It's
There.
a phone. Yeah, I
Okay.
can see the phone.
So I'll read the notification. It's for a Facebook notification. It says, see fewer live video notifications for Gillmor gang. Yes or no? What do you guys think?
Uh, well, I would pick, leave as normal.
You
No,
gotta,
I'm serious. That's what I usually do.
I'm gonna say no.
And what does that mean?
Oh, do you want me to do it right here? Can I just say I'm gonna do no? And
Here's the
That
funny
is
thing.
part of your, possibles.
Here's the funny thing. I didn't get that notification, which means that Facebook thinks you're on the fence about whether you want to be watching the Gillmor gang, but it thinks that I'm all in.
wow, Facebook's AI seems to be getting a little better.
So are we
Well, I
near a
didn't get it
top
either.
or a bottom on that? So how's Facebook doing? Is it going to get broken up? Do we care?
It is not going to get broken up, and we don't care.
Didn't the House of Reps pass what is that? What are they calling that thing? The Defending America Online Act, something like that. Didn't that get some conversation going this week?
I missed that actually.
It's interesting that everybody wants, I don't know if you guys saw, but Andreessen Horowitz, a woman, Kathleen something, I've forgotten her second name, Kathleen Boyle, wrote a piece called American Dynamism. And it was basically an essay on why, in order to be future-proof, America needs innovation. And she couched it in very national terms. It was all about American dynamism. And it seems like everybody wants to embrace the flag to support their point of view. I was kind of surprised that they called it American dynamism, because it's really human dynamism.
And you said that's interesting, right?
Yeah, because what Brent just said about the American something act, why is everything American? It feels weird to me. Why do people use that word? It's like America, to me, America is a verb. That is to say, it represents progress and democracy and future. But when you say it as not a verb, but a noun, it becomes the nation, and then it narrows it.
Well,
it's a democracy. And
Allegedly.
the legislature wants to make sure that people like you and I on this show can refer to the bills they were working on it with snappy little acronyms, so that the bills don't get lost in the sauce.
But doesn't our optimistic side want Americanism to be the same as globalism? I mean, the gap.
Are you kidding me? That you can say globalism in this country?
The gap between
deported.
Yeah, but you'd want everyone to benefit from the same things we benefit from, right?
What? Where'd you get that idea? How long have you been in this country, Keith?
Good question.
Um,
You're
It
an
reminds me of
American.
Yellowstone.
What about Yellowstone?
There was a beginning of one show when Kevin Costner is shooing some people off of his land. They were Chinese tourists, and they said, "You shouldn't own all this land. You should share it." And he said, "This is America. We don't share land."
There you go.
Okay, so there's a disagreement between Keith and Brent about Americanism.
No, it's not Keith and Brent. It's like, how many times have we heard the word globalism used in the last 4 years as a positive thing?
Exactly.
I counted on my fingers here.
It's traditionally just been a dog whistle for anti-Semitic Jewish conspiracy. When people say, people say urban, they mean black. They say global, they mean Jews.
Well, yeah, but because we're all, around the tech industry, I always think that if you separate out politics and economics, and you just talk about economics,
And what's left?
well, I don't mean separate them out. I mean discuss them independently of each other. So economics clearly is globalizing at a rapid rate, as in there are things being put in place that are bigger than nation states, and Facebook's a good example.
Yeah, that's allegedly the case.
But then
it may also be a super rationalization for something which actually might not happen.
Well,
But to some extent, it is happening. It's hard to argue that it's not happening. I mean, all of the tech giants have global customer bases, global supply bases, and global employee bases.
Yeah.
Bigger than most countries.
I'm just involved in an acquisition it's a Singapore company with a LA subsidiary, a Madrid subsidiary being bought by an American company. And it's a fairly small acquisition, but it's completely global in its characteristics. And with the remote workforces, that's even more and more true. So
I mean, even relatively small companies still in the early stage and startup stage, start looking for engineering talent in India and in China. And they don't necessarily hire local.
So then if you make a list of what is global, the workforce is becoming more global. Infrastructure, like even banking, obviously travel was global for decades. Banking is becoming global. Crypto is accelerating that. So the things that are global is more and more of what we do in our life is global, but politics is peculiarly national. So there's a mismatch between the politicians and what the variables are they have to play with, and the actual variables which are changing our lives. They're disconnecting.
Well, you have to keep in mind, though, that this kind of thing ebbs and flows. This is not the first age of globalism. The first age of globalism started just after the Napoleonic Wars, and it actually started in the aftermath of the first true World War, which was a war that involved the British Empire against a whole host of characters, including
the Crimean War or something.
The United States. Crimea was later. So during that globalization period, we saw a great deal of international trade and commerce, and a lot of it was due to the fact that Britain had the empire upon which, quote unquote, the sun never set. That all came to an end in 1918, probably 1914, the Great War. Slowly, we've been rebuilding that in the aftermath of World War II with Pax Americana, but that's clearly coming to an end as well. So I think that the next move may very well be consolidating your gains and relying more on national governments as opposed to any kind of globalization.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my PhD thesis was the history of the ideological evolution of the communist ideology. And if you look at Stalin basically coined this phrase socialism in one country and made the enemy monopolies. And that was in this time period you're talking about. So the whole of the ideology, instead of being against capitalism, became against monopolies, which is obviously core to what Elizabeth Warren narrative is, and the Democratic Party. And that comes from the rise of Stalinism and the belief in Stalinism that they could only have a revolution in one country, therefore they became nationalist and made the enemy monopolies that were global, when in fact, I think the opposite is true. Global business is where innovation comes from, and it's good for the human race.
For some.
Yeah.
Can you even, I wonder, in your research, can you distinguish the difference between Leninism and Stalinism, and is Stalinism truly socialism?
No, they're massively
It looks more like organized crime to me.
No, you're exactly right. They're chalk and cheese. It's the same as the difference between Hitler and capitalism. You know, so Leninism was, you know, a fairly rational body of thought related to the fact that Russia was czarist, that there was a mass peasant population with an emerging working class, largely employed by foreign companies. And he made the point that you couldn't have, you know, a post-French Revolution in Russia because there was no independent working class. It was all foreign employed. And therefore, the only revolution you could have was a peasant one, which would lead to a revolution in a poor country. And in a poor country, if you have a revolution, you become dictatorial because you haven't got the resources to actually deliver on the promise. And so Lenin was completely rational. Stalin was the, you know, COO to Lenin's, you know, founder visionary, to go back to Michael's thing about vision. Stalin was the operator executor, no pun intended.
Heavy accent on the executor.
Yeah. And so there's nothing in common between Stalinism and Marxism at all. They're not the same thing, any more than there's anything in common between Mein Kampf and Adam Smith.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking about the dog.
Excuse me. So Keith, here's a question I think is interesting, and I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear what you say. Is Vladimir Putin more Stalinist or more Leninist?
He's actually a hybrid between Stalinism and the Russian Orthodox Church. He's a religious nationalist.
He's a Tsarist.
He's a czarist, and he bought all of his methods from Stalinism, but his intellectual framework is Russian nationalism and Orthodox Christianity.
Oh, that's scary. It sounds a lot like America.
Yep.
Well, I didn't believe that we could actually go here, but we did. So it's a tribute, Keith, to your relentless drive to ism it into submission.
Well, I am self-declaring that I hate Stalin.
Okay, well,
And I prefer capitalism. I'm also self-declaring that I think monopolies. I'm not being nuanced here, and if I was forced to, I could get nuanced. But monopolies are way better than Stalinism as a way of making the human race get to a place of goodness and paradise, as Michael was saying.
okay, let's drill down on that. What do you mean by that? Name a company and be specific.
Well, so
it's way better for Facebook to, you know, crush all opposition as it acquires and.
Yeah, I do think so. I think if you separate Facebook's ownership and self-interest economically from the things it's delivering to us as tools, the things it's delivering to us as tools are being delivered at an amazing pace, at an amazing scale that no government could possibly have copied or done as well as. And the only bad thing is it's all owned by Mark Zuckerberg and controlled by Mark Zuckerberg, who we have to trust with making good decisions. That's bad.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think that's the only bad. I mean, the tools are available for abuse by multiple players. They're you know, like most technology, they can be wielded for good or ill. And in many cases, Facebook technology is being wielded for horror,
Well,
for terrorism.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I think it's a very difficult conversation, but that's where the good, it's really important to preserve what's good, because it's so easy to point out what's bad, because obviously there's so much that's bad, but it's way harder to understand what's good. And you know, look at what we're doing now. This is global, this technology. It's got WebRTC, it's got all kinds of standards to do with video involved in it, it's audio, codecs. All of that is like amazing. It's just fantastic that it exists. And it exists, why? Because of private companies pursuing self-interest to deliver it to us, using the technology around. And so private companies are clearly the driver of human experience, the cheapening of everything, the democratization of everything only comes because of private industry.
I would disagree with only, because it's all
Yeah.
built on a foundation that was of an infrastructure that was publicly supported.
But it never would have been taken and evolved without private industry. You're right.
That's
I
right.
don't disagree with you.
You know, they're both necessary.
Yeah.
You
Now-
can't say it only happens at this layer, but doesn't happen at that layer.
Right.
One layer builds on another.
Now that positive momentum is truly global. It's the most global thing. Ownership is local. So, you know, Facebook is an American Delaware corporation. So ownership is local, infrastructure and tools are global. And comparing that ecosystem to governments, even left-wing governments, they're not even close in their ability to deliver for us. Now, that isn't to say that they don't play a role. Funding research and stuff like that's very important. And so here's the hard thing. The future of ownership is going to end up being the problem, not the technology or the tools. The tools are going to be great. The technology is going to be great. The fact that they're owned by a shrinking number of billionaires is going to be the problem. Now, how do you fix that? In the old Marxist days, you'd say you need a revolution. In those days, it was against governments. This would be, it would back to Stalin. The problem are the monopolies.
Yeah, you know,
how do you fix that?
This to me, there's always this lurking rationalization for, you know, everything moving toward this crypto future that conveniently avoids the fact that people are getting their head handed to them by actually trying to exist in this, you know,
Yep.
wild, wild west that's going on.
No, I agree.
So-
I actually don't have an answer to my question, by the way. I think it's a
But
conundrum.
you are asking the question, and what I'm trying to get at is there's a subtle underpinning to this view of globalism as I hear you expressing it, which is a rationalization for the sweep of technologies that offer some sort of, you know, brave new world.
Yeah. Well, you're right. That's a good accusation. Because if you were forced me to say a single sentence, I would say globalism is good. And the technical core of it is good. And nationalism is bad. And the narrow scope of politics surrounding the nation is bad. As in, you can't really solve most human problems at the national level. But that only leaves a problem, not a solution, which I don't have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look at it as an example. COVID vaccines. They were invented in labs by technologists. They wouldn't have been promulgated without governments coming forward and saying, we're going to buy hundreds of millions of doses.
Yeah.
If it was simply a market solution and Pfizer had to buy ads to sell their vaccine and everybody had to say, well, can I afford that? You would not have had a mass vaccination campaign.
Yeah, no, well, that leads to a different question, which is if you look at the different governments around the world, and there's almost 200, and you ask who bought the vaccine, and you did a little pie chart of where it went, it wasn't really human, as in global and human. It was very national. And
Yes.
that's where national self-interest trumps human self-interest. Hence, we still have travelers from poor countries spreading the virus. So,
Well,
you know,
because there's so much resistance. There's so much resistance to having a global government. The only governments we have are local and national.
And all the global institutions we have are held in discredit, quite rightly as well, because of their ineffectiveness or their capture by one or other lobby. So yeah, we're describing you know, a world that is far from perfect, but we can already imagine what might be better in our minds. It's just how hard it would be to make that happen is.
So here's a data point. And I don't remember the source of this, but it was last week at some point. The number of electric vehicles in Europe, I believe, has passed diesel.
Yeah,
The number purchased.
it's one
What?
of the only.
I'm sorry.
The number purchased last year exceeded 20%. The number of diesel vehicles was below 20%, like 19.
Okay, so can we see what does that mean for us? Is that a good thing?
It's all related to the supply chain stuff that we're so aware of. I have a portfolio company.
Is it a good thing?
Yes, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's
Thank
a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what does it augur for, solving this problem of nationalism and partisanship infecting our future?
I don't think it does anything.
Yeah, it's
Really?
it's orthogonal,
Okay.
only to the extent that.
So in other words,
it's- well,
here's an
here's-
obvious
here's-
example of, something actually happening that may have an impact if
Yeah.
it's
Yes, it will have an impact in this
globally.
regard. There will be a greater infrastructure for manufacturing, marketing, and supporting electric vehicles, derived globally, an infrastructure for supplying batteries. That eventually is going to help all of us. So it may start out at a national level, but the thing about markets and products is that they don't stop at boundaries. They don't stop at national borders.
It's interesting. If you look at Elon Musk and what he's done in China and Germany, he's about to open the gigafactory in Germany, and the Chinese gigafactory is already producing Model Ys. And he's done it.
What's a gigafactory?
It's the name for the large factory that Tesla builds to manufacture.
It's his brand name for a big factory.
Yeah. And so, you ask yourself the question, how did Elon Musk get the Chinese government to let him, essentially have a shot at becoming a market leader in the Chinese auto market and build and employ people locally? And he's done the same in Germany. And you would think that would be hard based on all the discussion around China and tech. You'd think it would be hard, yet he did it. And I think it's to do with leadership and not being national, but being global in your mind and having empathy for all the different people you got to deal with in their own context, and being able to navigate the minefield of politics that gives rise to. It's about leadership. And to me, leadership being global is a key performance indicator of success.
I think there isn't exactly global leadership. There's multinational leadership. I mean, you have to look closely at what were the terms that Musk and the Chinese government came to. What did he offer them specifically? If you want to find out how he did it, that's where you have to look.
Based on my business work in China, where I did a deal with the government, the only deal point they cared about was what resources you would commit to their country and how much control they would have over you not being able to pull those resources out. That's about it.
Right. I mean, a lot of it has to do with I think, the stage of that particular industry or that particular product in China, and what their global interest is in advancing electric vehicles in China and advancing the availability of automobiles altogether in China. So if this is a way to help them reach that goal, they're willing to deal.
Quick poll. Your next vehicle purchase, is it going to be electric or not?
Hands up for yes, it's going to be electric.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about you, Steve?
Oh, electric, totally. I mean, as long as there are enough charging stations, it's a no-brainer.
You only need one.
And for most people, I don't think you need a lot of charging stations because most people don't drive that far. If long distance trips are important to you, then having lots of charging stations is a requirement. But if you just commute for less than 20 miles a day to your office and for shopping, charge it at home, and you'll never have to worry about anything.
And there's a really good example, by the way, because if you're looking at electric vehicles, and I do, I'm about as obsessed with YouTube videos on electric vehicles as I am about YouTube videos on espresso machines, which is a lot. And the best electric vehicles in the last year, technically, have come from Kia and Hyundai and Ford. Assuming that Tesla was already there before. So I'm talking about new vehicles that weren't in the market before. Now Mercedes with the EQS, so it's starting to be, if you wanted to buy an American electric vehicle, Tesla easily wins. After Tesla, you've kind of struggled to figure out what the next one is. Lucid and Rivian are both really not close to production yet.
Polestar,
you can't really get one.
that's what I hear.
Yeah. So, and I think Mercedes and the Korean manufacturers are catching up. Toyota and Subaru have built their first electric vehicle together. It's a 4-wheel drive SUV that looks very good. So, a year from now, you're going to have a lot of choice once they get through the supply chain issues and it's normalized, maybe 2 years from now. And it's going to come from all over the world. And then the Chinese brands are Li, NIO, and XPeng are actually ahead of Tesla technically in terms of how far their vehicles go and what kind of batteries they go on and how much luxury there is in the car, in the seats and the everything. So the Chinese brands are really getting quite good.
Brent, you've got a date with Destiny there. That thing on your head there. What does it say? LAR.
Ask Tina.
Yeah. I just want to give you a few minutes since you're about out of time here.
My head is all about one thing right now, so it probably would not add anything to the conversation going.
But that's not a requirement for the show adding anything.
Sneak peek.
I'm looking for.
You're looking for what?
Well, I think adding something at this point.
I'm surprised nobody has brought up the censure thing in Arizona. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know what it means, but it was interesting to finally see, some kind of action on one of those two folks. I don't think it really.
This is Kirsten Sinema being censured by the state Senate, correct?
Yeah, her and them. Yes.
Not the Senate. I think it's the local Democratic Party. The Arizona Party.
The locals there.
So
it's basically back to Stalinism. It's the party bureaucrats.
Let's not go back to Stalinism. Can you make the point without?
It's basically what's happening here is probably from Biden's office, but if not from Biden's office, certainly from Congress. They can't control her there, so they're pulling strings behind the scenes with their buddies, hoping that they can command a majority against her in the local party, and they're basically doing a witch hunt against her because they don't like what she decided to do.
Well, I think that's the Stalinist view. I don't think it's directed from the top. I think there is widespread revulsion and disappointment with her. And if you ask me, I would censure her. I don't think you have to direct people to do something that comes natural. She's been polling terribly in the state, outside of the state. She somehow has an irrational attachment to something, or she's been bought by the other side. I don't know which. But this is not Stalinism. This is rationalism.
Well, that's what Stalin would say too.
Dennis, Dennis, your thought?
I think it's nice to see, but I think it's ultimately ineffectual. I mean, you get elected to, in the Burkean sense, follow your best instincts, and when you get to Washington, that's what she's doing. And lots of people don't like it. I don't like it.
The reality is, though, she's got 3 years left to her term. Nobody can control her. She can do whatever she wants for 3 years, and she will not get a second term.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so basically what the party is doing is beginning a drumbeat campaign so that she'll get primary.
Sure. Well, but the party isn't doing that. Twitter has been doing that for a year.
Yeah, but you know that
has been coming up.
I think you're right about it being ineffectual, because take a look at this, Trump energy around primarying. It seems like it's not clear yet, but it seems like there's a slow but steady drip of strength away from Trump, and the midterms may well prove to be a data point that's going to take the Trump stock south like Netflix.
Could be.
Yeah, the question is how slow is that?
On the other side of the coin, you've got a lot of Republicans behaving badly, such that at least in some of their states, they may not get reelected even if they're not primary.
Now, if you were scoring the Democratic Party out of 10 for the last 12 months, and let's say just briefly we become the strategist body for the Democratic Party, you have to start with the fact that they had a bare majority in Congress as the canvas on which they're performing, and the chances of them, getting anything fundamentally passed were low. They actually did a good job getting past what they did get past. So I think that, if the strategy was to resolve itself down to a single goal, it would be increase our majority at the midterms. That would be the only thing worth focusing on. Instead of doing that, they focused on an internal fight to try to squeeze through what they can get through with this slim majority, and have failed. So now they stink. They look bad, not because they've really done anything wrong, but they set themselves unrealistic goals and failed, as would have been predictable.
Yeah, I disagree with the narrative there, which is that they look bad. I think they look better in comparison to the Republicans.
Well, they do. They should look a lot better, right?
Well, yeah, but the election isn't today. It's
right. You have to you have to modify that statement by who's looking, because they look differently to different viewers.
That's right.
Right.
So somebody was commenting on it was the press secretary, Jen Psaki, is that her name?
Yes.
She basically said that they're doing fine.
I think they are. If you listen to, for instance, Representative Katie Porter, talk about what the Democrats have achieved, it's amazing. In terms of real purchasing power, she said families have about $400 more per month in their income, even adjusting for inflation, than they had at the start of the campaign. That's a story that isn't getting out very much. I hope the Democrats learn how to get it out there. But if you look at polling, there was an NBC poll released this morning that said, on the right track, wrong track, 72% of Americans think we're on the wrong track.
But that's
why is that? Maybe it's COVID. Maybe it's the price of gas. Maybe it's the price of milk. Maybe it's it's the story of the Democrats have failed to pass this and failed to pass that, or maybe it's because part of the country is still with Trump. But 72% wrong track is a big number.
You're on a roll, Michael. You could keep on going because everything you said, I think it adds up to why everybody feels like that. I think it's generally, before I take my leave and go into my code of silence, I think it's generally because it's hard to feel good about good.
You know, we were talking about the range of electric vehicles earlier. Right now, I have a range that goes to the front walk of my property. That's where my range stops, and I'm a little tired of that.
But isn't it kind of like almost feel like human nature that, let's say we can name 9 positive things, and the 10th could be a negative, and although it's only 1 out of the 10. That's where the media and most people seem to dwell on. And so even when you got 9 things to feel good about, it's damn that 10th one. And it feels like, we're going nowhere, even though 9 out of the 10 things could be really good.
That's right. Now I'll expand on that. Different people would have a different item that they feel bad about, but it doesn't matter. So if you're feeling bad about something, that goes into I'm feeling bad. Now, you might be feeling bad about how your team did. You might be feeling bad about, the COVID restrictions, or you might be an anti-vaxxer or an anti-masker, but you feel bad about something. It doesn't matter. People are feeling bad.
Well, keep that in mind and expand it just a little bit. It doesn't all end up at the feet of the Democrats or Joe Biden. I feel badly that we couldn't pass voting rights. I feel badly that we couldn't amend the way the Senate operates. I feel badly that we can't get Build Back Better done. Are those Democratic problems or not? They're primarily Republican obfuscation. So the key, I think, is we need to make sure if we're leaning Democratic that we not simply talk about the things we've done right, but talk about what the other side is preventing. And
I think there's some evidence that that's happening. When Biden made a little part of his speech about what are the Republicans for, he's clearly shifted.
Good luck, Brent. Good luck.
I'll be feeling real bad if something good doesn't happen in about starting in 30 minutes, but that's my problem.
All right. Well, check back with us.
Have a good week.
All righty.
Hi, Brent.
No, I think Dennis made a really important point. What people feel bad about the Democrats is that they haven't overcome the Republicans. Well, that sounds like the core of a message.
It does.
Well, no, I think you have to start with the canvas, though. I mean, the country is remarkably evenly divided. If we assume the election results are accurate, a few million votes, on the Democrat side versus the Republican, and when that gets reflected in the House and the Senate, it's closer still. And so you're having to play the game on that field. Right. So for sure you're going to be somewhat restricted in what you can and can't do. Therefore, and the goal is to be able to improve the field. That's really the goal, to improve the field so that you can do more. And almost everything they've done tactically has made the field worse for them.
Well, in the short term, but I think that what you are saying is dawning on them. It's clear that they wanted to try and get as much done as they possibly could in the first year. This year is a shift to looking at the elections, and I think they're going to stop going for maximum. What I'm hearing from interviews that congressional representatives are giving on cable news is they're shifting to try to just pull out the climate provisions of Build Back Better as the singular focus of what they want to accomplish next. And everything else goes into the campaign manifesto for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is related to the reconciliation process, which only allows 1 or 2 bills per year. So that's a fairly credible strategy for getting most of this done at some point. I don't think
if they can get 53 senators in the next Congress, then they can tackle the filibuster and get more things done without having to have a supermajority. that's a big if.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do think is going to happen is that they're essentially going to drop trying to keep the House Democrat and focus on those two additional senators so that they have a little bit of leverage against the Manchin cinema blockade.
Yes. What makes you think they're going to drop the House?
Yeah, yeah. What makes you think that?
Like everything else, a very small amount of data, probably incorrect, and intuition.
Well,
I mean,
each of these-
the benefit of the House is that it changes every 2 years, which means it really changes every year.
Right. But if the Republicans control the House next year, it's going to be wall-to-wall investigations. It's going to be, the Benghazi hearings times infinity. It's just going to be horrific. So I think the Democrats will fight very hard to keep that from happening.
Yeah, I didn't say that they wouldn't fight. I just think that they're going to lose.
Well, you said they're going to drop the idea of keeping the House. Predicting they're going to lose is one thing. Predicting they're not going to fight
effectively,
for it is
they're going to focus on the Senate in order to be able to materially impact in the future on the Senate's ability to tie everything up and let nothing actually happen.
It's not an or situation. It's an and.
Yeah.
The reason to keep the Senate is to get more judges in, and to expand the Senate, the reason is to do something about the filibuster. But if they lose the House, they can't get anything done anyway. So having the Senate and not the House is just a partial victory. Gets them judges, and it gives them and say they drop the filibuster. They still can't get anything passed if they don't have the House. So it doesn't do any good to kill the filibuster if you don't also have the House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everything you say makes sense. I still say what I say.
If you take the core of the Biden talking points from his 2-hour news conference.
No, please don't.
So on Meet the Press, they focused on what are the Republicans for? And secondly, we could have done better with COVID. We're sorry, but we're doing it now. And it feels to me like neither one of those is substantive enough to put the wind in the sails. The one about what the Republicans are for assumes anyone cares. People who will not vote Democrat are not voting Republican because of what they're for. They're just going to vote against the Democrats.
Well, remember, there are at least 3 blocks. There's the Democratic base, where the issue is, can you motivate them to come and vote? There is the Republican base, where the issue is, can you demotivate them to come and vote? And then there are the independents, who seem to be the swing back and forth, determining who wins.
Yeah, that's my point. But those people are not going to be influenced by the question, what are the Republicans for? Because they're right now, they're tilting towards being just against the Democrats because of failure.
Right. Let's not forget the key event of the next 2 months, which are going to be the public hearings of the January 6th committee.
I don't think anything other than people like us care about that. I think we do, but I think the masses, not their biggest thing in there.
All right, so let's just switch to the second one, which is we didn't do great with the virus, but we're doing better now. You don't think that's a potent message? I do.
Well,
Which way?
I think the first question that arises
for the Democrats, because if there's a scenario that we can, in the small majority that Democrats have, can latch onto, which is, okay, it's been terrible, and we've got this serious political problem that's making it endemic and continuing. On the other hand, am I going to be able to get in a car and drive somewhere in the next 3 to 6 months? And if the answer is yes, I think that's going to impact on the election.
Well, that's where there's a lot of political risk has to be taken. It's interesting what's happening in the UK. In the UK, they've discontinued all, with a capital A, restrictions on anything, and said we're now going to live with this and back to normal life. And whoever gets sick. Whoever doesn't get sick doesn't get sick. We're encouraging everyone to get boosted and have vaccines. We're even prepared to go to a fourth vaccine, but life's back on. And that was last week or the week before. I can't remember exactly when they decided that. I think it was
Okay,
last
but
week.
that's in the state of UK.
That's the UK, which
Yeah.
is
Okay. So what we're talking about here?
right. So what will Biden do? Will Biden say the same, or will he err on the side of caution when it comes to Omicron spreading, or will he err on the side of getting back to normal life? The wind seems to be blowing in the direction of getting back to normal life being the winning decision.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree with that, but there are three factors here.
I can't hear you, Dennis.
There are three factors at
Dennis,
work.
I'd like to hear what Dennis said on the way to hearing what Michael's saying.
All I'd say is what you're describing is a chimera. It doesn't really exist. We've already done a natural experiment in Florida, in Texas, and many other places where we've said, let's go back to normal life. Just because you want to go back to normal life doesn't mean the virus is ready to let you. Go back to normal life, you're gonna see massive spread. You're gonna see overwhelmed hospitals. Good luck with that. I think the UK is probably 3 weeks away from having some serious COVID problems again.
Okay, Michael, you were saying?
I was going to say there are three different levels and layers of what's going on here. One is biological and epidemiological. The virus will continue to mutate. We don't know if we'll get a new variant that's going to infect everyone widely or severely. We don't know. That's an outside event. There's this public health measures, which are either followed or not followed. And there seems to be political division about whether you should or should not follow public health measures, some of which are more or less intrusive. Closing down the economy is a very intrusive public health measure. I think vaccines are not intrusive. Masks are only mildly intrusive. But there's political organization around resisting all of the public health measures. And then there's the practical level. How will people be living? Are people going to go to the gym? Are they going to go to the movies? Are they going to go to the office? Or are they not? Are they going to go to the store? Are restaurants going to be open? Are theaters going to be open or not? We don't know the answer to these questions. So, living with it's not a binary issue. Let's let everything go back to normal or not. There are different lanes in which you have to play and adjust things.
Right. But the thing is, in terms of politics, in terms of the coming election, there's going to be a finish line, and how that is played by the two major parties is going to be determinative. And my bet is that at the moment, like you say, there could be a new variant that is devastating. There could be a continued, what we're seeing right now. At some point within the next 3 to 6 months, probably 3 months, there's going to be an understanding that this may not be the new normal, but it's something that I can live with.
Right. It looks like we're going to have a huge fall off in Omicron infections. You're already starting to see it in the states that were hit earliest. Where I live, it seems to be topping out, and there'll probably be a huge fall off. And the political impact is only partially in the hands of the politicians.
Yes, but it's going to have an impact, and that impact, I think, is going to be pro-Democrats in the Senate.
Well, so if I was Biden, here's what I would do. I would have as strong a possible vaccine mandate with whatever powers I've got, obviously limited especially in the context of the Supreme Court. But I'd have a very, very strong focus on vaccines, married to a very strong focus on opening up. And I would say that those who choose not to get vaccinated are making their own decisions, bad decisions, and we'll have to deal with the consequences. And we're not going to be closed down anymore. And so I'd say leadership there will have a massive impact on how people think of him.
I agree with you.
I think we've already hit the point of not being closed down anymore.
Well, we could be open more. You know, one thing that's not being addressed is that people are saying, we're hearing in the media that Omicron is less severe, but nobody's talking about the difference in severity between people who are vaccinated and people who are not vaccinated. The fact that we've got so many deaths and so many overwhelmed hospitals indicates that Omicron is just as bad as anything else, and it's the vaccines that are knocking down the severity. So if you're smart, you want to open up, I think the message is that look, we can do this if everybody gets vaccinated. And I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing you need to get vaccinated because vaccines are absolute good. And there's a lot of people that just aren't buying that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people cherry picking that discussion and using it for the benefit of just saying no. The one data point that I have from yesterday, obviously not a significant one, but meant something to me, is we took a walk in downtown Pacifica, and I would say that 70 to 80% of the people on the street were wearing masks. Now, that is not the case 3 months ago, 6 months ago, at any point. Now, this is California. Who knows, what that indicates? But it seems to me that that people have been touched by the Omicron expansion. You just don't find people who don't have a family member or a friend who has been infected by this. The ones that hasn't been, right. The ones who are vaccinated are surviving. The ones that aren't, some of them are not.
Yeah, the problem is that at this point, the message has become so complex that you can't reduce it to one or two bullet points. There's a lot of granular information to absorb. So, to Dennis's point,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about what Dennis was talking about.
I just said 2 data points.
Yes, you said 2 data points.
Those that are vaccinated are staying, for the great majority, out of the hospital and not dying.
Yes, I've heard that.
Heard
that, and
that hasn't been contradicted by any information that I've seen.
I agree, and I hear people saying that. I hear that message all the time. I see that message all the time, but it's lost in a noise of all the other factors, because you're not guaranteed to stay out of the hospital if you're vaccinated and boosted. So people are always saying, oh, look, he was vaccinated, he's in the hospital. Oh, he was vaccinated, he died. That creates a churn of noise that dilutes the clarity of the message you're trying to get across.
Not significantly. If I had to make that choice, which I have, I'm going to get vaccinated. It's just a matter of math. It's just math.
I understand that.
Even if 10%, whatever, I don't agree with you that this is being reduced in noise in terms of the overall political ramifications. I think it's a no-brainer, and people who understand that and want to understand it are largely protected from the most severe consequences of this pandemic.
I agree. But the key thing you just said was people who understand it and who want to understand it. It always comes down to audience. There's an audience who is resisting the message. There's an audience who's opposing the
I
message.
understand that, but as Keith said, there are those people who are resisting are going to face consequences that those that don't resist will not.
I have a question for Keith. If you're prescribing the Democratic message, to what extent will you go after the Republicans who are opposing public health opposing public health measures? Does that become part of your campaign?
No, I generally think anti-Republican messages, even the most valid, are a mistake because
Keith, you're either you've turned your level down or somehow I can't hear you.
How is that better?
That's better. Yes.
Yeah. So I generally think that an anti-Republican message, even when valid, doesn't really move the needle when it comes to results. I think people need to see tangible change in their own life more than they need to understand what's wrong with the other side.
Michael, what do you think?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
You asked.
There are always in every campaign positive and negative messages. There's always, as Steve Hayden used to say about advertising messages always are about the promise of sex and the fear of death. If you do this, you will prosper, and if you don't, you will suffer severely. So there are always negative campaign messages that warn you about voting for the bad guys, and positive messages that say, if you vote for us, here's what you're going to get. Here's how many chickens we're going to put in your pot.
You didn't ask me the question you asked, Keith. I'll answer. From my perspective, yes, you are right. That will be an effective message to go after the Republicans.
Yeah, I think a little bit differently. I think historically we've seen that politicians that attack their opponents and slur them or actually do pretty well. I'm thinking about George Wallace in '68 calling his fellow Democrats pointy-headed liberals. I'm talking about Ronald Reagan in 1980, who disparaged liberals every chance he got and made conservatism sound like the promise of sex. And I think one thing the Democrats can do is take that page out of their playbooks and find their own way to disparage conservatism, because conservatism certainly has enough things going against it that it shouldn't be that hard to do. And just look at the filibuster, for God's sakes.
Okay, I'm going to wind it up here. I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Thank you.
Nice balloons, Tina.
Somebody asked about the balloons on what are those balloons for?
They were for my birthday.
For our producer and director's birthday.
The pink balloons in the background, yes.
Yeah.
They were a gift from our daughter.
I want to thank Brent Leary, who is happily now ensconced in the belief that the future will be better for the Los Angeles Rams.
It'll be different.
I want to thank Frank Radis. Hopefully he will return next week from his travels. And I want to thank Michael Markman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Keith Tier.
I thought you were going to forget me, Steve. I was thinking he's about to close and he hasn't thanked me yet.
Never.
No, but I forgot to thank Tina last week. So I'm just going down the priority list. I want to thank Dennis Pombriant. Thank you, Dennis.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And
Happy birthday, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who showed up and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.